Hello and welcome to another episode of Codo Cinema, the podcast show where I talk about movies. I'm your host, Mark Codo, aka Codo Man, the myth, the legend. Well, we got another exciting episode for Codo Cinema Christmas month, and the movie that I'm going to talk about is obviously considered to be one of the greatest Christmas movies for kids. Is the Muppet Christmas Carol. Now, for those of you who are probably wondering about the Muppet Christmas Carol, it is obviously one of the few great Muppet films. Well, not the best Muppet film, but it's one of them. Plus, many people consider the Muppet Christmas Carol to be one of the more faithful adaptations for the Charles Dickens novels, A Christmas Carol. And to be honest, I can actually understand that. Now, just to give some just to give a brief just to give some history about my take on the Muppets and of course Christmas Carol. I I grew up more with Sesame Street, and yes, Sesame Street has Muppet characters because Jim Henson, the creator of the Muppets, not only created the Muppets but also Sesame Street as well, particularly for the Muppets. And of course, I grew up with Sesame Street more than the Muppets, but it wasn't until I saw other Muppet films that came out, like the first Muppet film that came out in 1979, and of course the recent 2011 and 2014 Muppet films. But of course, since this is a Muppet Christmas Carol, this is adapted from the Christmas Carol story by Charles Dickens, and going to the Christmas Carol side of things, I read the book back in seventh grade from my point of view, and of course, I have seen the 1984 Christmas Carol film starring George C. Scott, including the 2009 motion captured film that was also released by Disney, directed by Robert Zemeckis, and starring Jim Carrey as the character Ebenezer Scrooge. And then I have also seen The Muppet Christmas Carol, which stars Michael Caine as Scrooge. Now, I actually saw the Muppet version back in seventh grade as well, and I didn't think there were multiple Christmas Carol films until I saw the Muppet one, and I thought the Muppet one was brilliant. Although at first I didn't know what to think of this film. I mean, having Muppets in the world of Christmas Carol. I mean, because I mean the Muppets. I mean, I guess you can argue that the Muppets are more kid friendly, and of course they're definitely gonna slip in some adult references as well. But over time, I thought it was clever because when you think about it, A Christmas Carol has been adapted to film and TV multiple times, so it would make sense. So anyway, that's my little history on how I viewed the Muppets, and of course the Christmas Carol, because obviously, because here's the thing, because the Muppets, because I grew up with Sesame Street and they're also Muppets as well, but that's just coming from me, since both Sesame Street and the Muppets are from the creator Jim Henson, who actually plays Kermit the Frog. Okay, so anyway, going into this film, I want to talk about it because the Muppet Christmas Carol is celebrating its 30th anniversary. That is right, folks. It has been 30 years since the Muppet Christmas Carol came to theaters. It is described as an American Christmas musical comedy drama film directed by Brian Henson. In his feature directorial debut, Brian Henson is the son to Jim Henson, for those of you who may or may not know. And he has worked on a lot of Muppet films, particularly with Jim Henson and prior to his passing as well. And speaking of Jim Henson and his passing, this is one of the films where the Muppet Christmas Carol dedicated to Jim Henson. And while it wasn't the first, and it wasn't the first film that it was dedicated to Jim Henson, one of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles films that Jim Henson also contributed, dedicated to Jim Henson as well, because Jim Henson passed away in 1990. For those of you who don't know, Jim Henson died of to- his cause of death was toxic shock syndrome. Passed away in May 16th of 1990, and of course came out the film came out in 1992. So basically, yeah, this was the this was considered to be the fir- the first to be produced following the deaths of Muppets creator Jim Henson and of course one of the Muppet performers Richard Hunt, which the film Muppet Christmas Carol is dedicated to both of them. Now, what's surprising about this film is that it really has a Muppet style to it. Not because of the Muppet characters they use, but also the sets. The sets alone are built sets, and it really has that very good Muppet vibe to it, as if you're watching like a full-on cinematic Muppet film for a Christmas Carol. And obviously, we do have the human characters, particularly well knownly Michael Caine playing Ebenezer Scrooge. Fun fact: there were other actors who were up for the role of Ebenezer Scrooge, which includes David Hemmings, Ron Moody, and David Warner, and of course, legendary American comedian George Carlin. I wonder what George Carlin would have looked like as Ebenezer Scrooge. That film will probably be bumped up to either PG-13, or our film. Well, well. To be fair, there was a Muppets film that was rated R. What was that film again? I don't really remember, but it was with Melissa McCarthy, and that film was an R-rated film. Happy Time Murders, a a basic puppet like Muppet film that Brian Henson did, and that was an R-rated film. Wow. Just imagine if George Carlin took over that role. But anyway, this is also. But anyway, the Muppet Christmas Carol was also one of the first few Muppet films where Kermit the Frog is not the main lead. I mean, sure, he plays one of the leading characters, but was more on a supporting role, particularly Bob Cratchit. Kermit the Frog plays Bob Cratchit, including other characters as well. But most notably Bob Cratchit. Plus, Steve Whitmire plays Kermit the Frog, taking over Jim Henson's role, because Jim Henson was the original puppet creator and actor to play Kermit the Frog in the earlier Muppet films. Steve Whitmire even played Rizzle the Rat, Beaker, Bean Bunny, and other characters as well. Dave Goelz plays the Great Gonzo, who plays Charles Dickens, the narrator throughout this film. And I will say this: having the Great Gonzo playing Charles Dickens in the Muppet Christmas Carol is actually clever, because he is literally telling the story from his point of view, as if Charles Dickens was there. And I find it very clever. And I also find it funny that Rizzo the Rat is literally right next to him too. And and also and also and also I got Sesame Street vibes out of this too, because you know how in almost every episode of Sesame Street you get this opening line from one of the characters saying, "Oh hi, welcome to Sesame Street." But this time around, we get the Great Gonzo as Charles Dickens saying, "Oh hi, welcome to the Muppet Christmas Carol film." That got me Sesame Street vibes out of it, and I like how they introduced that to the film. Particularly to know as well that this is a Disney film. This is actually the first Muppet film to be distributed by Walt Disney. But also later on, later on, the other Muppet films. Well, actually, no. Disney bought the Muppets like in 2004. I guess like the deal was finalized in 2004, but during the 90s, the Disney would distribute a couple of Muppet films, with the Muppet Christmas Carol being one of them, but also Muppet Treasure Island that came out in 1996, about 4 years after the Muppet Christmas Carol. So basically, this is when Disney was still in the process of buying the Muppets, but it wasn't finalized until at least a decade later. I mean, I think I believe this is when Disney was good back then, but good with how to handle things, but not anymore in today's filmmaking world. But other than that, Michael Caine as Scrooge, I actually like Michael Caine as Scrooge. I didn't realize that was Michael Caine. I mean, I think because the Scrooge actors I remember is George C. Scott and Jim Carrey, and I didn't realize there were other actors who would play the character of Ebenezer Scrooge. And Michael Caine as Scrooge was obviously a pretty good choice. I mean, yeah, there were definitely times where he underplays a bit, but it actually works out very well because the fact is Michael Caine's trying to be a little more serious over the top, I should say, and of course and of course and of course like Michael Caine took the role of Ebenezer Scrooge and then Michael Caine says, and I quote, "I'm going to play this movie like I'm working with the Royal Shakespeare Company. I will never wink. I will never do anything Muppety. And I'm going to play Scrooge as if it is an utterly dramatic role and there are no puppets around me." Well, to be fair, there were puppets around like Michael Caine, especially when he was walking in the opening scene, like during during a musical number where all the Muppets were talking about Ebenezer Scrooge because Ebenezer Scrooge was walking weird because behind the scenes footage he was walking around on planks because all the filmmakers and camera operators were getting shots of the Muppets while keeping Ebenezer Scrooge's face a secret before the big reveal at the end of the song. And also, not to mention, this is also one of the first Muppet films to use CGI, and it actually worked pretty well. I didn't realize it was CGI, but when you kind of think about it, I mean, there definitely needs to be some computer aspects to the film. Eh, anyway, I mean, looking at this film, it is a beautiful film, and I like how the filmmakers went out of their way to create some interesting characters. As I mentioned, Kermit the Frog was Bob Cratchit, and I believe he did a pretty good job. And on top of that, Mrs. Piggy played Bob Cratchit's wife, Emily Cratchit, and she did have a bit of a temper, especially at the end of the film where he's about to knock Ebenezer Scrooge right off the front porch. Until Scrooge was like, "And I'm about to raise your salary." It's just clever. I also like how I also like how Fozzie Bear, Fozzie Bear, I believe he and Kermit are very good friends, plays Fuzzy or should I say Fozzie Get it? Fozzie Bear, Fuzzy Wig. That is probably one of the most clever ideas put to film. It's just, it's just funny because if you think about it, Fozzie Bear as Fozzie that is just gold right there. And the fact that Frank Oz plays Fozzie Bear, or should I say Fozzie Wig, is definitely the cherry on top. I also like during the moments where Anna Animal, who's one of the party entertainers playing the drums, plays the triangle in a very annoying mode while he is breathing heavily, and it's just funny the way how he does is like, I mean, how can you not laugh at that? And okay, okay. But anyway, the film itself does follow along the book very, very well. Now, I know some of you may be saying that there are definitely other adaptations that do better, but according to some sources, that's how that's the film itself follows the book, or should I say, original story very closely. And I will say this: there are definitely times where okay, I see where they're going, but what about times when you have two different versions of two different Marleys, like Jacob and Robert Marley, like Jacob and Robert Marley, because hey, two Marleys are better than one, I guess, because Statler and Waldorf are they're known as the, to my point of view, the balcony guys, or the balcony guys, because they like to heckle at everything, like they heckle at what the Muppets are doing at their show. But having them both as Jacob and Robert Marley, that's pretty clever too. I mean, you get to hear their laughs, and yeah, and also they both, Jacob and Robert Marley, have a pretty good musical number too. We're Marley and Marley. That's probably my favorite musical number in this film, because it does showcase what's gonna happen to Scrooge if he continues down this path as what the Marleys did. Because if you remember in the story, um, Jacob Marley was doing the same thing what Ebenezer Scrooge is doing, like swindling the poor, not doing anything good. He, in his punishment, when he died, he was forced to wear the chains, and it's going to happen to Ebenezer Scrooge if he doesn't change his ways. Paul Williams, who wrote the music for the earlier Muppet films, like the Rainbow Connection in the first Muppet film, he also wrote songs for the Muppet Christmas Carol as well. And I think and I think the musical number with Jacob and Robert Marley, that was probably the best musical number in that film, in my opinion. And looking back at it now, like after 30 years, it still holds up. Now, I didn't really grow up with this movie, to be honest. I mean, I saw this when I was in 7th grade. But looking back at this film, it is a good film to watch. I also like how the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future are different Muppet characters rather than they're like original Muppet characters, but not Muppet characters that we know. So I found it very clever. Like we get the Ghost of Christmas Past being being a different Muppet. Like I believe that it's a Muppet from one of Jim Henson's earlier films from the 80s, particularly the Dark Crystal. Like if you've seen the Dark Crystal, there are different Muppet characters in that film. And to be honest, the Ghost of Christmas Past, who's basically a little girl, has a face that looks very similar to one of the Muppet characters from the Dark Crystal. And and of course, we also get another Muppet character being played by Jerry Nelson. He he is basically a giant Muppet like, very giant Muppet like Ghost of Christmas Present, who almost resembles Sweetums a little bit, but not really. And in that moment alone where he gets a good conversation with Scrooge, it's actually pretty good because Ebenezer Scrooge begins to like the Ghost of Christmas Present. Like he's pretty happy. He's like wondering what's going on. Somehow he really enjoys it. I really do. And of course, the Ghost of Christmas Future. I mean, there's not much to say about it. Not really much to say about it. I mean, I guess you could say like, yeah, Ghost of Christmas Future. You kind of know what to expect. But But really, the way how Ebenezer Scrooge travels with the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future, including Rizzle the Rat and Charles Dickens being played by the great Gonzo, they do travel a lot, and I like how they interacted with what's going on in the past, and particularly in the past and present, and not as much as going on in the future. Well, actually, unless you count the moments where Scrooge sees Kermit the Frog as Bob Cratchit, Mrs. Piggy as Bob Cratchit's wife. They're all mourning for the loss of Tiny Tim. Um, and going back, I do like in the past um, where we see Ebenezer Scrooge as a young boy about to graduate with good honors for business, and Sam the Eagle, Frank Oz plays Sam the Eagle, by the way, who congratulates Scrooge, and he's about to have him go into the business world. Also, a nice little funny joke. Sam Eagle does have a bit of a more of a has a bit more of an American way passion, but I do love the mess up it happens because Charles Dickens, Great Gonzo, whispers into Sam Eagle's ear, telling him like, hey, we're not in America, we're in London, because this is a Christmas Carol. Christmas Carol, the setting of that is in London. So I like how the Great Gonzo was able to correct Sam the Eagle because Sam says it's the American way, but then later switches out to it is the British way. It's kind of funny if you really think about it. And of course, I already mentioned Fozzie Wig and an animal, but also but also Scrooge meets a young girl named Belle. Even after 30 years, when Ebenezer Scrooge breaks up with Belle, there was a song that was actually cut from the film, but was later brought back for the for different versions, including the one on Disney Plus, because Disney Plus just recently put the song back in, and the title of the song was called "When Love Is Gone," because it really shows Belle singing about it's basically the breakup song. It's a breakup song because Scrooge cares more about about his business while being greedy than his girlfriend, and it really shows because somehow Scrooge was once in love but not anymore, and that's what Belle is singing about. And I like the part at the end of the song where Ebenezer Scrooge, the older Ebenezer Scrooge, sings along the last few lyrics, and it really is. It's a sad song because we see Belle breaking up with Ebenezer Scrooge because Scrooge cares more about his business than the love of his life. And at the very end of the song, Rizzo cries, and Gonzo tries to cheer up Rizzo, and it's a very sad song. It's a very sad song, but also the fact that this song was cut out because for some reason, I don't know the reason behind it, but there are definitely some reasons behind it. Some may argue, well, it's a cheesy song. I mean, okay, maybe it is a cheesy song, but also some people may point out, and this is probably from my point of view, she was smiling. Belle was smiling throughout the entire song. She wasn't upset. Yeah, I guess you could say maybe her words do feel more upsetting, but when you look at her face while she was singing, she was smiling. She was smiling throughout the entire song, which could be one of the reasons why this song was cut. Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was one of the few one of the few filmmakers at Disney before he went to DreamWorks, cut the song out. And now and now many years later, this song was brought back because without the song, why was Rizzo crying? Because after Belle tells Scrooge, "Oh, you used to love me," she walks away, and then it cuts to Rizzo crying as she was walking by Rizzo and Gonzo. which really feels feels choppy, because if you think about it, the scene itself, let's just because the scene itself feels short without the song. With the song though, it makes a lot of sense. So in my opinion, When Love Is Gone was probably a good idea to have in this film, in my opinion, because it really does flow in pretty well. But I guess you could say it is a cheesy song at times, even though Belle is smiling throughout the entire song. But at the very end of the day, what can you do about it? I mean, what can you really do about it? I mean, it's a beautiful sad song, and I thought the song itself in that film helped, especially at the very end. I do like how there's a rendition of When Love Is Gone with When Love Is Found, and I found that to be a pretty good, fitting song end to the Muppet Christmas Carol, which is good. And then obviously enough. I mean, probably know how the rest of the story goes, like where Ebenezer sees his present, basically what's going on during Christmas, and of course he sees Bob Cratchit and his family enjoying Christmas dinner, and of course seeing Tiny Tim. I also like the fact that we see Mrs. Cratchit having two different Miss Piggy piglets, I guess. Like there were piglet children. There were girls, by the way. And and I will say this, like I can definitely tell. It's really amazing that Mrs. Piggy and Kermit the Frog fall in love in the Muppet films. and then we do see Kermit the Frog with Tiny Tim, and then of course they have their Christmas dinner, and on top of that they do have a nice little musical number, and of course jumping into into the future, we do see the whole ordeal that Tiny Tim is dead, and realizing that Ebenezer Scrooge is dead. Ebenezer Scrooge is dead as well. But also, the fun fact is, Rizzle the Rat and the Great Gonzo, Charles Dickens, I should say, they didn't stick around for the future part, because it's a pretty scary sequence. And can you blame them though? I mean, especially when especially when it's made for a children's film. But I will say this: the story itself, I guess that you could say it does have its light moments, but it's mostly a very dark story too, because this is Ebenezer Scrooge seeing his past, present, and future, and particularly in a Muppet film as well, because it does have its light moments, but it does have its dark moments when Ebenezer Scrooge realizes that this is what's gonna happen if Ebenezer Scrooge continues down his path. He's gonna die being a greedy, mean old man if he doesn't change. And of course we get to see that when Ebenezer Scrooge sees his grave, he starts crying and begs the spirit that he can change, that he can literally change. And well, yeah, I guess the music itself doesn't land as much, but at the very end, the scene itself really does the job well. And of course, you probably know the story. Ebenezer Scrooge wakes up in his bedroom, realizing that he is alive, and of course, he is happy for Christmas. He even goes out to see one of the kids, actually Bean Bunny, that he actually sees because he was annoyed by Bean Bunny at the beginning of the film, where he throws a Christmas wreath at him because he asked Bean Bunny to go get the biggest Christmas turkey prize and bring it over to Bob Cratchit, and he does. I really like how he meets up with the charity donators, the two charity donators, and he was able to make a donation to them. And of course, we get a pretty nice musical number where Ebenezer Scrooge goes to different markets to buy food for Christmas party for the Christmas dinner. And he also buys lumps of coal for his office, because his office is not only being run by Bob Cratchit, including Ebenezer Scrooge himself, but also like the workers as well. Because somehow, if you, for those of you who may not know, Rizzle the Rat's got a bunch of rat buddies as well that were also working with Ebenezer Scrooge in the Muppet Christmas Carol, which is because Kermit the Frog and the other rats were cold inside his workplace, and I like how Scrooge was able to buy lumps of coal for them. And of course, I like the ending where where Scrooge and all the other Muppets come together to have a Christmas dinner, including Ebenezer Scrooge's nephew Fred and Fred's wife, who's basically now Scrooge's niece-in-law, I should say. and to end this, as I mentioned, there was a rendition of When Love Is Gone, which is now being When Love Is Found, and I found it to be very clever. And it works because now Ebenezer Scrooge found love again, and all the Muppets start singing that song, and that's brilliant. And of course, the film ends with Ebenezer Scrooge, no, not Ebenezer Scrooge, Great Gonzo and Rizzle the Rat, and the story. Great Gonzo was like, Tiny Tim did not die, and of course you have Tiny Tim saying, God bless us, everyone. And the film ends with the credits rolling. We get to see the credits and one of the musical numbers playing, and it's very, very good. Now, overall, this is the Muppet Christmas Carol is a very good film. Well, for a Muppet film, it's a very good film, and it is one of the few good Christmas Carol adaptations. And for over 30 years, it still holds up. The Muppet Christmas Carol still holds up as one of the few great Muppet adaptations, and of course Christmas Carol adaptations as well. Although I do have a soft spot for the Jim Carrey Christmas Carol, because it is a film that I like, but the Muppet Christmas Carol one, it is a pretty good one too. I mean, what do you all think of the Muppet Christmas Carol? I mean, did you like this film? I mean, did you like this film? I mean, did you grew up watching this film? Do you think this film still holds up 30 years later? I mean, let me know your thoughts. And other than that, that's pretty much it. And please let me know if I missed on anything from this film, because it is a good film, and it can be, sometimes there are definitely moments in the Muppet Christmas Carol that can be easy to miss. But other than that, overall, the film still holds up. I like Michael Caine as Scrooge, and the production aspects, the direction that Brian Henson went was very good, and other than that, a very good adaptation for not only the Muppets but also for Christmas Carol as well. Anyway, that's all I have. Please let me know your thoughts. Please let me know your thoughts, and let me know if I missed out on anything. And thank you all for tuning in to Codo Cinema. I'm your host, Mark Codo, aka Codo Man. Remember to watch movies and stay positive.